I have experienced anxiety a lot in my life. I would say this is a daily thing for me to experience anxiety and being nervous or feeling frightened, that kind of thing. So leading up, I was feeling anxious for sure. And I had this fear of something actually physically going wrong for me while I was in the plunge. And even though by the time I actually did the plunge, Josh had done it probably a dozen times with no adverse health effects or anything. But for me, there was this fear that, oh my gosh, if I go in there, maybe I'm going to get hypothermia. Maybe I'm going to get frostbite. Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Off the Mat. I am Nicole Stratichuk, and I am joined by no one today. This is my first episode that actually, Josh is not even in the room. So it's a little bit intimidating for me to be here all by myself and recording an episode for you. So anyway, let's get into it. So this episode, I wanted to talk to you about my first cold plunge or ice bath experience. And it's a doozy, or I felt like it was a doozy. If you don't know anything about cold plunges or ice baths, you're not alone, because I don't actually know that much about it either. I know there is some health experts or people out there that will say that the cold plunge or ice bath is beneficial for health reasons, maybe for recovery after workouts and things like that. And honestly, I haven't done too much research on it. Josh got one of these ice bath things, so we have a little cylinder at home. It sits outside. Right now it's minus, 34 degrees Celsius outside. So it is just a single block of ice. But normally, if it's not that cold, it stays insulated so that the cold bath or the ice water there, it is ice and water. It's very cold. And the whole purpose is to plunge in there and stay in there. Now I've heard that, 3 minutes is when you start to reap some benefits from staying in the cold plunge. So my goal was to do the cold plunge for 3 minutes. When we first got the cold plunge, Josh was in there right away, and I rushed home so that I could see him do his first plunge. And it was crazy to watch him, because I knew that it was hard. I knew that it was hard for him to sit in that cold water, and he did it. The first try, 3 minutes, he did it, no problem. And when he came out, he just said, it's really cold. And the worst part is his fingers and his toes. But really he was fine afterwards. So here's my experience with it, because it took me almost 3 weeks after we got the cold plunge bath for me to actually step in and do it. So let's get into it. My first ice bath or cold plunge attempt. So I want to start this episode by saying that not everyone needs to set this as a challenge or a goal. This was something that I decided that I wanted to do, and I'm going to get into that. But by no means am I saying go out and try the ice bath. But at the same time, I also want to tell you that you are stronger and more capable than you think you are. So take that twofold. I don't think that everyone needs to rush out and do this. At the same time, if you find that this is a little bit challenging for you or scares you a little bit, you are capable of doing it. And maybe this is a good challenge for you to do for yourself. So why? We've talked about why do hard things, why set challenges, why set goals, all of that type of thing. And, my overhanging why in my whole life is to continually learn and grow towards the highest version of myself so that I can make a positive impact on the community I serve, which includes my family, my friends, my martial arts community, anyone that I serve in the community. But when I look at this challenge of taking the cold plunge for 3 minutes, I really set out a different why. And not so much different, but just one specific to this challenge so that I could connect to it. And so I said, I wanted to do this ice bath, cold bath challenge. So to challenge myself so that I can be reminded of how strong I am and that I'm capable of more. And I just wanted to feel proud. So leading up to this experience of me getting in the cold plunge, I have experienced anxiety a lot in my life. I would say this is a daily thing for me to experience anxiety and being nervous or feeling frightened, that kind of thing. So leading up, I was feeling anxious for sure. And I had this fear of something actually physically going wrong for me while I was in the plunge. And even though by the time I actually did the plunge, Josh had done it probably a dozen times with no adverse health effects or anything. But for me, there was this fear that, oh my gosh, if I go in there, maybe I'm going to get hypothermia. Maybe I'm going to get frostbite. It, is minus whatever. It's February in southern Alberta. You never know what kind of weather you're going to have. It's usually cold in February. I was worried about those things. I was also worried, just random fears that I had about what if I have a seizure, or what if my heart stops, or I had all of these fears that physically something was going to go wrong when I did this plunge. Now, that fear, I did a little bit of looking around in the cold plunge and I couldn't find anything to attest to those fears, to prove those fears right. So that helped me ease some of that anxiety. But another big fear that I had was the fear of failure. I was scared that if I attempted it, it would be so cold and I wouldn't be able to last that whole 3 minutes. Now, at the same time, I was like, it's 3 minutes in cold water. I can do that. I can totally do that. But there was this, what if I couldn't do it? What if I did fail? I was going to be disappointed in myself. I was fearful that, maybe Josh would be disappointed. Maybe my boys would be disappointed, and I'm a woman of my word. And I know we've heard that, man of your word, be a man of your word. And I wanted to do this. I said I was going to do it. I made that promise. I made that challenge. I said it out loud. I was going to do it. So I had to somehow figure out a way that I was going to do it, even though I had this this paralyzing fear of failing at it. And then another thought, or another fear, anxious thought that I had was, do I even care? Because it's an ice bath, it's a cold plunge. I had to keep reconnecting with my why, because I would start this downward spiral of negative thoughts of, why does it even matter? What's the point of it? And that just got me into this downward spiral of thoughts of why am I even doing this? I don't want to do this. This is stupid. This is silly. But I had to keep going back and connecting why I wanted to do it. Well, I wanted to challenge myself so that I could remind myself of how strong I am and that I'm capable of more than I think. And I also just wanted to feel pride about doing something hard. But those three things, so the fear of something actually physically going wrong in the cold plunge, the fear of failure or disappointing my family, or what was even the point, those three things really allowed me to come up with so many excuses. So I told you, we had the ice plunge, the cold plunge, for 3 weeks before I got into it. And it took me so long because I allowed all of those doubts and fears to talk me into this downward spiral and come up with so many excuses. When I was saying some of the things, I was like, what am I even talking about? It's 3 minutes. I would use time as an excuse. A number of times I use that excuse, oh no, I have to teach classes at 4. I got to teach at 3. I got to teach at 5:30, and it's 2:00 in the afternoon. I had the time, but I made it so that, no, I don't have time. I can't do it right now. Or I would make the excuse, so I do have really sensitive skin, so that's a health issue that I have, but I would make that sort of excuse like, no, that water is going to be bad on my skin, or the ice is going to hurt my skin. And so I made that kind of excuse. I made all kinds of excuses because of these fears, right? I didn't want to go out. It was too cold outside. Well, it's February. It's going to be too cold anyway. So I had to quit making these excuses. But those 3 fears and thoughts, those failures or those doubts, they just allowed me to come up with all kinds of excuses. And I wish I could think of some better examples, but I had 3 weeks of excuses not to get into the plunge. What finally made me do it though was Josh is away right now, and he is doing, you've heard him talk about it, is that Modern Day Night project. And he is there doing 75 hours of the hardest things I've seen. I've been following on Instagram. I've been following the stories and trying to catch a glimpse of him. And I know they are going through some tough stuff. But prior to that, I didn't actually know too much about how hard this project that he was going to participate in was going to be. But I decided that I really wanted to do this ice bath, this plunge, before he entered the project, because I wanted him to be proud of me too. And I wanted to show him that I can do hard things though as well, even though this cold plunge, this 3-minute cold plunge, does not even come close to comparing to the 75 hours that he's going through right now. So anyway, how did I prepare to do this ice plunge? And I think this is important to just tell you my thought process, because whatever it is, it doesn't have to be the ice plunge or the cold plunge or ice bath. It doesn't need to be that. But I kind of go through the same process no matter what challenge that I'm going to take on. So I thought I would let you know how my thought process went for doing the ice bath. So how did I prepare? The first thing that I did was actually make the decision to do it. And so for the first 3 weeks before I actually did it, I tried to make the decision, but I never actually made the concrete decision to do it. On the day that I finally did it, I had made the decision that today was the day. There was no excuses. I was not going to allow myself to make any excuses. Today was the day for me to do the cold plunge. So I spent quite a bit of time that day connecting with why I wanted to do it, right? And I had said that I wanted to challenge myself so that I could feel strong and prove to myself that I'm capable of more than I think. The second thing I did was I visualized this process many times, and I did it many times over the 3 weeks. But especially on that day, I made sure that I had some time to visualize before I got into the ice bath what that experience was going to be like. I feel like I could do a whole nother talk on visualization and how I do that process. But in short form, I always visualize myself as like third person. So I always see myself like I'm like having this out of body experience. So I could see Nicole in the tub. I could see Nicole in that ice bath. I could feel Nicole feeling how cold the water was. I could feel Nicole's discomfort. I could feel just the ice and cold and freezing. I could feel everything that Nicole was feeling, but I could also see, think, and feel how Nicole was reacting or responding in that moment. I knew that Nicole would respond by taking a breath, getting control, figuring it out, and pushing through. I saw Nicole pushing through that 3 minutes, no problem. The third thing is I did plan out what I was going to do. So Josh left for his project that morning, and I really wanted to make sure that I got this done before he left, or he left, but I was hoping that I would get it done before he started the project. And I knew I had a couple days in order to get that done, but I decided to do it that day because the snow was going to fall, the temperature was going to drop, and I knew that that ice bath would be one solid block of ice if I didn't do it that day. So I made the decision to do it that day. I planned it out. I planned that I would do my yoga and my yoga practice that I do every day. I would do that, and then I would do my shavasana or my meditation right after, and I would meditate about going into the ice bath. And I did that, and I did it for 6 minutes, and that 6 minutes, it passed by so fast. I usually, that 6 minutes that I do at the end of my practice is quite, time moves relatively slower, and I quite enjoy that time. But that 6 minutes before I went in the ice bath went by so fast. So I did my 6 minutes, and I knew that at the end of the 6 minutes, I was ready to go. Now, I had already planned out how I was going to keep my time. I was by myself, right? Kids were in bed. Josh is gone. So I had to figure out how I was going to time myself, how I was going to video it, because I wanted video proof that I could do it. And I had to figure all that out. I had my towel set out so that when I got out, I could quickly wrap myself in a towel. I had that all planned out. When I went out to do it, so I had to go outside. Our ice bath is outside. When I went out, I was determined to do it. My mind was right. I knew that it was going to be cold. I pushed through that fear, and I took a video, and maybe we'll be able to cut to that video. But when I was just waiting to get in, I just had like my big toe in the bath, and it was in that moment that I just kind of shut everything off. I was like, you've already done the prep work. You already know what you're going to do. You already know what the mission is. You've planned and calculated for everything. There's nothing left to do but take the action. So I stood there with my toe in, and I was waiting for the timer on my camera so that I could know that I could make it to 3 minutes. And in that moment, I just shut everything off. I said, this is the moment. You're either going to go in or you're not. But I knew I wasn't not going to do it because I was determined to get this done. So when the clock hit 20 seconds, I got into the bath, and it was like no thought process at all. It was just like, just get in. And I'll tell you, the first 30 to 40 seconds was the hardest of that 3 minutes. In that 30 seconds or first 30 to 40 seconds, it takes your breath away. The water is so cold. I don't know. I don't even like going to the pool. So me getting into the ice bath was a challenge for sure. But that first 30 seconds was all about getting my mind right. So the instant that I got in, I shut my brain off. But as soon as I was in, I had to take control right away because, reflexes, I would have just jumped out of that water. But I took control. I got my thoughts right. I got my head right. I focused on my breath. I focused on my mission. I focused on my why. Once that 30 to 40 seconds was done, I was good. Like, I watched the video of me in the ice bath, and at one certain point, you can actually see me kind of look up because I heard a bird or I heard whatever was going on in the neighborhood. You can just see that it was nothing. Like, I was so in the moment and focused on my mission that it didn't matter what else was happening. It's almost like I just let everything happen at that moment. Now, going into this ice bath, you have to begin with the end in mind. And if you've read that 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey, always begin with the end in mind. And so that's where the why is so important, right? So in the following 2 minutes and 20 seconds, I just kept thinking to myself, why am I doing this? Why do I want to prove to myself, right? I just kept talking to myself like, you can do it. I was like my own little cheerleader, but I kept connecting to why. I want to prove to myself how strong I am. Once that 3 minutes was done, it was unreal. I did not let the excuses let me give up. I knew that I could do something hard, and I was proud that I did it. So at the end, it was just an amazing experience. Like, I got out, and if you watch the video, right at the end, I went up to the camera and I was like, I did it. And the smile on my face shows that I was proud. Now, when I got out, it is kind of a weird feeling when you get out of being in the ice bath for 3 minutes because you're cold, but not really cold. It's just kind of a weird feeling. And I ended up, my body was shivering, but I didn't feel cold. I think the feelings of being excited and proud, maybe some of those feelings took over and made my mind and my body kind of forget about how cold it was. But I didn't feel cold after. All I felt was really proud. I felt proud that I had set out on a mission and I had accomplished it. And even though I had all these doubts and fears and I had all of these excuses, I did it. I did it. And I was so excited to send this video over to Josh before he entered the project so that he could see that I can do hard things too. So my tips for you, if you're thinking of setting a goal, setting a mission, or trying something challenging or trying something new, and you're experiencing, fears, doubts, anxiety, here's my tips for you. Is number one, begin with the end in mind. What is your why? Why is it important for you to complete the mission or complete this challenge or complete this goal? And I would spend a lot of time here. Spend a lot of time really determining why you want to do that, why you want to accomplish this mission, and keep pulling back the layers of the onion. So ask yourself why, and if it's, I want to be healthier. Maybe your challenge is I want to go to the gym. If your why is I want to be healthier, well, ask yourself why again. Why do you want to be healthier? Well, I want to, be able to keep up with my kids. Okay, but why do you want to be able to keep up with your kids? Well, I want to be able to play with them. I want to be able to be a good example for them. You're just always continually pulling back the layers of the onion to really determine what your why is. So that's tip number one is to really, really connect with your why. The second thing is to prepare, okay? Prepare the best that you know how. For me, in this particular challenge, that meant planning the right strategy for myself to get in. So planning that I would do yoga, planning that I would meditate, planning that I would get in right away. And I had everything kind of set up for my success, right? If you fail to plan, you plan to fail, right? So just making sure that you have everything in process. And if visualization is part of your preparation, making sure that you're doing that. So really prepare. So connect with your why, prepare. And the third one is in that moment where fear is at, like that moment before I actually got into the bath, that's the moment that I'm talking about. In that moment, decide to take the action. Decide to lean in. Decide to experience the discomfort because you know something's greater is on the other side. So those are my 3 tips for you if you are getting ready to take on a challenge. Those are 3 main things that I found really useful for me in this moment. Number 1 was begin with the end in mind, connect with your why, connect with that mission, connect with what it's going to be on the other side of that challenge. Number 2 is to prepare and plan accordingly so that you set yourself up for success and not allow yourself any excuses to creep in. And number 3 is take the action. Take the action to get it done. Anyway, guys, I hope you liked listening to my ice bath experience. Like I said, I don't think everyone needs to go run out and do the ice bath quite yet, just because I don't know so much about it. But I also want you to know you can do it because you are stronger than you think and you're more capable of everything that you think. Have a great day, guys. Thanks for listening to Off the Mat. I am Nicole Stratichuk, and we'll see you next time.